Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. It's Dr. Bill, and welcome to another episode of Beyond Limits, where for me it's science. And I have a special guest today, too, which I'll introduce in just a moment. But just to set the stage for today's broadcast, we are, again, it was a week ago, actually, we did episode 26, Integrity is a Frequency. That's available on the website now, and you can go check that out. But that was our first deep dive into the subject matter for season three about the physics of presence. And again, we have a 25 episode arc planned out for the next 12 to 18 months. And there will be some guests that come on just like today, based on the topics. But today we are episode 27. Today our title is The Neuroscience of Faith and Belief as Biology. And pretty excited to do this topic today with Marcus here. But again, we're exploring the neuroscience of faith and how belief actually literally becomes biology. It really is, and it shapes our identity, our behavior, and the future we create. So, and in that well, before we get into that, let's take a couple minutes to ground ourselves and in this moment, and we'll take a few deep breaths through the nose, out through the mouth. So let's go. Breathe in and then hold that for a couple seconds and then release that out. Release all the worries of the day. Whatever else is going on outside of you is not important in this moment. Find a comfortable position. Breathe in. Sit into this presence. Be ready and open to receive whatever resonates with you and where you are in your journey. And let that embody you as you breathe in and breathe out. All right, and as we sit in that, take a few minutes. So I am excited today. I have with me today a special guest, um, uh, Marcus Aurelius Higgs. And Marcus Aurelius, not the emperor and philosopher, but I'm sure I know you have a story there on your name. But Marcus and I met each other through the stars.com network. We're both advisors and leaders there. And he reached out to me, and we really connected. It's the way it always works. It's you don't have to go find these things. And it's about a lot what we're going to talk about today in terms of setting expectations being expectant to receive on your journey, all the different pieces that fulfill your journey as you move through it. So Marcus is, I'll introduce him, Marcus, and I'll let you say a few words. But Marcus is perfect for today's topic. Okay, so he has
Okay.
creator of the story growth method, which will really tie into our neuroscience of faith. He helps entrepreneurial parents and early teens develop grounded identity. And he's been doing this for more than 20 years, working internationally with families and teens. And his expertise is in narrative identity, intercultural perspectives, and adolescent development. And I think the other thing too is I think you're in Miami, Florida, and I'll let you introduce yourself and tell a little bit more there. But why don't you do that, Marcus?
Hey, Dr. Bill. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me and sharing this space. Yeah, I'm in Coral Springs, which is a little bit west of Fort Lauderdale, so still
Yeah,
South Florida.
yeah,
Grew up in the Bahamas. My mom's from the Philippines, so I am a multicultural kid. I was born in Riverside, California, and for my adult life, I've lived and worked abroad in education. That's Oh, and it's worth noting, I first started off abroad as a missionary in South Korea. And I say my belief and understanding expanded. No animosity
mhm,
towards the church or anything, but it's inclusive now of what was and an
right,
appreciation for what I grew up with. Like it really has kept me a lot of this time, and we'll get more into the conversation. But then also
absolutely.
served in the Middle East, Spain, Thailand. So there's a lot of influence with the world that I really do love people in the world, and yeah, we'll get into it. Yeah,
Yeah, we will. Well, welcome, Marcus. Thanks for joining me on this. And
it's
I
wonderful to
believe it
be here.
really does, what your work does kind of fall right into this from your perspective and your journey. right at the intersection of belief and identity and of course the science of that, neurodevelopment, stuff like that. So again, I think it's a great fit for today. So everything happens in the right timing. So we were talking about this. I looked at my programming I have mapped out and I said, "Wow, actually it fits right with the next episode here." So we'll go right into that. So let's jump into it, folks, into the first segment here, which is belief is biology. And let's set the stage a little bit, build a little foundation. So I'm going to share a little bit. Of course, everyone knows, I think you all know now that I'm the scientist who had a spiritual awakening. I've been on the spiritual journey, but I am always learning, and there's always more and more. And I think today is very timely because we're really understanding the science more and how we can make bridge these connections to spirituality actually in our journey where before it may have seemed like pseudoscience or something like that, and there is some pseudoscience out there, but I really take the time to really deep dive and really look at how the biology and all these things kind of connect to our bodies and our spiritual path. So let's start with neuroplasticity, how our beliefs shape neural pathways. And so what is neuroplasticity? So for those who don't know, that sounds like a fancy term, but it's just the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout our life. And it comes from response to experiences, learning, or an injury or something like that. But it's a lifelong process that our brain is constantly doing to adapt and change um, to our surroundings and our journey. And so it affects the structure and function of the brain. So it enables functions like learning and memory and also helping us to recover from brain damage, things like that. But the way it works is that the brain creates these new connections between neurons and it strengthens or weakens existing ones. And we'll talk about beliefs and our belief systems and that because we are programmed through our journey of certain beliefs that could be limiting and we can change those. So you're not pre-programmed that you can't change any of that. So it's good to know for that. And of course, these functional changes then uh, uh, begin to develop and how do we solidify those new connections? We do it through repetition and practice. And I say it all the time, you need a spiritual practice, something that you're moving through that is going to reinforce uh, reprogramming your brain essentially to adapt to that and learn new skills and all sorts of things of that. So there's a lot we could deep dive on that. Um, but it goes back to our expectations, right? So these are neurochemical cascades. So like I always talk about this, Marcus, all the time about
Mm-hmm.
expectancy
What's up?
versus expectations, right? Expectations is when we kind of set an outcome for an event or something, expecting it to occur exactly that way. Well, that's not really how it works, actually. It's because when we do that, we've pre-programmed ourselves to a certain outcome, and guess what? More times than not, it doesn't happen, and we're disappointed, and we feel sad, or we get upset about it, or whatever. But the reality is that's just a neurochemical response to that because we set that. The flip side of that is to really have a presence of being expectant, so that you're open to the possibilities. And I'll talk more about this a little bit later here. But again, it's a different way of approaching how we move through our journey. And of course, faith.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Faith is a we'll talk about it not as a spiritual idea so much, but as a biological state because it is about this programming that we do. Okay, and
I'm
so
ex-
the yeah, go ahead, Marcus, jump
oh
in
no no
there.
I'm interested in to hear and we'll get
Yeah,
there when we get there. Faith as a programming outside of the
yeah,
outside of the spiritual sense. You know who does some great work on this? Her name is Lisa Miller. She's out of Columbia
uh-huh,
College for teachers
yeah,
in New
uh-huh,
York. She has a book called The Awakened Child. That's the reason I know because during those formative years, that's when you can
yeah,
actually implant some faith stories, and we see this inside the Jewish tradition with bar mitzvahs or the christenings and
right,
quinceañeras. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into that. Yeah.
sure. The other is, and this is just a quantum observation metaphor. Okay, what we expect, we collapse into reality. And so, what does that really mean? I want to be clear. I'm using quantum language metaphorically here, right? So, The
Okay.
real mechanism is biological. Okay, so belief shapes perception, perception shapes behavior, and behavior shapes outcomes. That's kind of the takeaway for this. So when we're talking about that, that's what I'm referring to. And so, Marcus, from your perspective, working with
Mhm.
families, and what beliefs do you think teens adopt that shape who they become, for better or worse? In your experience, what have you seen there?
Yeah. So I taught storytelling in the classroom. So I was an English language arts teacher for high school and middle school. So ninth, 12th, and fifth grade. And what I would tell them is stories are simple. Change happens and we give it meaning. All right.
Right.
One thing that is constant is change. And Jim Rohn said, one thing for certain, in the future, change is going to happen. Some people will see it as opportunity. Some people will see it as threat. If we start to teach kids in their character and in their identity, this is how you bounce back. That's how you teach resilience, right? There's post traumatic stress and there's post traumatic growth. But if you notice that, there's always, I say trauma. Trauma is just the tension that happens. And there's always tension in a story. It's called conflict. It's just a varying of wants or desires. That's what conflict is.
Right.
Not good, not bad. It's just two forces in different directions. But when you understand you can be secure in that tension, that's where you come through for growth. Everything that eventually grows must first break or must first go under tension. And that's funny. Like with neuroplasticity, you have to warm it up or it has to go through something where it gets your
Hmm.
attention. But
Right.
when you understand I'm secure in this, you start to tell yourself a new story. And identity is a story we tell ourselves about ourselves when we're by ourselves. So it's, oh, I can do hard things or I can come through this. You've been through some hard things, Dr. Bill, and the audience knows you better than I do, but we've
Yeah.
all been through hard things. But
Sure.
it's because we've had that experience and we know we can come through that we tell ourselves an empowering story of resilience.
Hmm. That's right. Yeah, and I think I've been talking about this for years in terms of, in fact, I even did a previous talk years ago about overcoming limiting beliefs, right? And just the exercise to do that. So for sure, it's the stories we tell ourselves, and a lot of it obviously it's we all have unique past that we grew up in and cultures and all these things programmed us a certain way. And it was learned behavior from that experience, good, bad, or indifferent, until you kind of wake up and where it doesn't feel like it resonates with you anymore, right? And so you want to change that. But then I think there's a fundamental thing within human nature and cultures anyway, and that is that uh, except if you really move into faith-based religion somewhere or culture in the world, if you don't really engage with that, you have this belief that you don't have a lot of self-confidence. You don't believe that you can create the world that you want. You accept everything as fact and don't really think about how you could do better than that. Unless there's some inkling within you that says, "Why am I here?" and you start to ask those questions, then it kind of comes forth, right?
Well, interesting. I thought about it when you said that. I, okay, so first of all, I'm BYOB, bring your own beliefs, right?
Right.
And what I mean by that is, I think somebody can exist outside of a faith culture. I believe in faith cultures because we need community, and that's how they started forming. But I think a
Sure.
person can exist out of it with an understanding of nature, feeling connected to something greater than yourself,
Hmm.
and finding the divine to say, hey, what do you want to create? And there's an invitation to expression. I think that is what's needed for confidence to build, for something to say, hey, I want to hear your voice. Your presence is welcomed. You belong. And there's an invitation to expression. And I think in our modern world, we don't offer that a lot to our kids.
Yeah.
And social media is really inundating them with, okay, you're a consumer, consumer,
Oh,
consumer, and
yeah.
consumer. But it's, hey,
Right.
what do you want to create? Who are you? And by creating, we start to define who our being is. That's where we get our
Yeah.
identity as
Yeah.
creators.
That's right. Well, that's a good segue into the next segment here, which is really about the stories we believe, right? And
Mm.
which reframe our identity, our faith, and neuroscience. So again, how does that work? So again, as I said before, we're probably our own worst enemy in terms of our own internal narratives. We create those emotional signatures, but those influence our HR physically. And we can
Mm-hmm.
measure that today. Influences HRV, heart rate variability, our coherence. I talked a lot about this in
Mm-hmm.
last episode, and our behavior, right? So all of these things are stories that we carry with us into adulthood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And without getting into my past and troubled things that happened in my past, I had a lot to overcome in my 20s to really, as I moved into adulthood and on my own, that just did not serve me anymore. And so at least I had a framework to think, okay, this is just doesn't feel right. Okay, I need to change this, and I took the leap to really improve myself and really go through. And I did a lot of years of therapy too, by the way. So, all these things are learned experiences that from the past that program us, but that doesn't. But I want to say that we're not married to that for all our lives. We can change all of that. We can change anything. So for you, Marcus, what from your
Mm-hmm.
perspective, how do you, what do you want to talk about here in terms? Yeah,
Man, yeah. Something that was just put on my heart. So the language we use, and the language is the arrangements of vibration, right?
right. Yeah, it's all
With phonemes
frequency.
and so on. It's all frequency. But they elicit, they bring forth something. Now, watch this. Growing up, my experience with the divine, with God, in my walk with the understanding of a higher power, it was never one of fear. It was always, I see you, I understand you, I'm welcoming you. My home
Hmm.
wasn't one of fear, there was love. But when we read the Bible, this is why I say people are looking at through their own lens. When King James was written, it says, fear the Lord, fear God, and so on. Fear there was actually translated as respect. Respect means to look at again, spect meaning to see, and look at again because of the awesomeness that is there.
Right.
But I know people who grow up in a particular tradition where there is a fear of a greater power, higher power, or authority, and there's a breaking of control and so on.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think from an early age, that wasn't my experience. It was, oh man, this is something that's awesome, and it's welcoming and inviting me to co-create. Like, I really, I started writing from a young age, poetry. And I think that is one thing that has kept me through my journey. It's because that's where I go to process the, the problems of life.
Hmm.
So my point being is, I found a safe space with higher powers, greater forces that empower me to show up and express how I do. And I think when you can do that with somebody during their formative years, it really
Yeah.
does, for better or for worse, and not good or bad, but I mean, it does set them on a trajectory of, okay,
Yeah.
what is this world about? Jared Clifton, this is the last thing I'll say. Jared Clifton from, he was at MAPS, um, the Masters of Applied Positive Psychology in Pennsylvania. He has this
Hmm.
approach called primals. Primals is the lens through which we see the world, to see if it's safe, to see if it's a threat, to see if it's mechanical or if it's organic. Look it up. There are three primals. And this affects how we show up in the world and for our well being and for how we, the flourishing of life. It's really
Yeah.
worth looking into. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. And if I think about, I was a probably a unique teenager in some sense because when I was 15 years old, I was
Mm-hmm.
reading the How to Win Friends and Influence People, The Power of Positive Thinking, Norman Vincent Peale, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I
Vince
that
Appeal.
oh, the biology. Actually, there was something about belief. I forgot the exact title. But yeah, there was, this is not new concepts we're talking about, but they've become more refined and more understandable, I think. So for me, I was reading all these books as a teenager. For sure, that had some formative thinking for me in terms of programming my direction, because I always felt from the time I was a kid. And by the way, you'll hear a lot of these stories in my upcoming book, which I'm excited about. So it's part memoir in there, but it's been fun going through and writing that. And, it's based on my 80 plus talks, but then I'm weaving in their stories from my life. And that it's, it's so cool to look back and see all those and see how they fit in the bigger picture, right?
All the dots
That
connect
there's
themselves in
this
retrospect. Go
Yeah,
on.
they
Yeah.
always do. Yeah, they always do. And there's that phrase that hindsight's 2020, but it's so much more than that. And what I've learned also as well, when I used to read all those things, then I've learned that it's more than aspirational. Okay.
Tell me about this.
Yeah. And what that means is it's more than just positive thinking, which is
Mm,
was what we're talking when we say aspirational. No, it's about embodying that into that yourself,
mm,
and as if it is already. And of
mm,
course,
mhm.
we talk a lot about this in, I don't know if familiar with the Centers for Spiritual Living. I actually used to go to their church, and I started going there in 2000,
Dr. Michael
2008.
Beckwith?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. He
mhm.
went. He was a minister within the Centers for Spiritual, and then he founded Agape in LA, of course. I actually met him. I saw him speak before. A cool guy, very down to earth. Okay, but yeah, but we had and actually there was a class. I took all the coursework because I thought I was going to become a minister in that faith, and which is very much aligned and resonant with me in terms of scientists and the spirituality piece of this. But I knew that that wasn't my ultimate path, so I didn't pursue that. But I learned a lot from that. It's just a part of the journey of studying all those different spiritual teachings out there that I've done over the years. But he talked a lot about visualization versus visioning and all of that, and of course. Um, the people know him today, and I've read a couple of his books too. Spiritual Liberation is a great one if you haven't
Spiritual
read
liberation.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, so let's move into the neuroscience of faith and leadership because became a great spiritual leader. He obviously transcended what he was meant to do on his path, and he has a story. Obviously, his background and upbringing led him to that. But um, so for me, faith is again, we talked this not so much from a spiritual aspect, I mean, a religious or spiritual aspect, but more of a, there's a neurochemistry to that because and it's going beyond, it's transcending just being aspirational. Okay.
Okay.
Because you can sit around and be, say, I will be that someday, or like in
Hmm.
the future. No, you are that today. You are
Hey.
already a divine being, okay? This divine spiritual being and this human expression that you have today. You are already that. Okay, so there's nothing that you have to do. You just step into that faith, right?
Yes, and I agree with you, and that's not to an extent, but I would put a nuance on that.
Sure.
Um, it's when you look at the acorn, it the potential of a tree is there, and not to say potential, like everything that is needed is there. I wouldn't say it's not a tree, but with time, effort, and pushing, it will flourish into a tree. That means the
Sure.
fullness is all there. And it's
Yeah.
always emergent, right? I think the universe is expanding and it's pushing out from the middle and it's being pulled by the ends. So yes, I have this practice where I do talk with future Marcus, and I'm getting later on in my age and I'm becoming that future Marcus. But I look back at what I
Yeah.
wrote as a I look back at younger Marcus, and it's just like I look back at it with gratitude. And it's like you helped bring me here, but I was speaking wisdom to you. So like
Right.
both of those were true. In communication we call it indexing. There is the infinite eternity of now, but future Marcus was very real talking to me, and I was very real having a conversation with
Sure.
me. I may have gotten
No,
convoluted in
no,
there,
but
but you get it.
I get it, and what that means is for me is
Mm,
that is actually you're stepping into the essence of who you are already. So you
mm-hmm,
are already that. It's just waking up to that fact. So that's why you have
mm-hmm.
that future communication. So
Yeah.
where does that inspiration come from that guides you from the divine, from somewhere outside of you, from within you? It's all of that. It's there's a
Mm,
synergy to all of that. And so that's what guides you and moves. And it only shows up in your life when you're ready for that. So
mm.
the universe will only deliver to you what you can handle, okay,
Yeah.
when you're ready for it. And so
I,
I took
I,
I took the Yeah, sorry, go
What's
ahead.
up? No, no, I think one of the catalysts, and mind you, I'm well aware of, I'm well aware of suffering. That's something different. But I think the catalyst for bringing forth what's in you is is resistance. That's how I'll say it. Everything has to be pushed through resistance, as in to say, what's not me,
Yeah,
what is me, and that's where you
right.
see stuff waste like move away, and it's just like, oh yeah, I'm refining who I am through
Yeah,
resistance.
exactly. And that's again, perfect segue into our next segment, Marcus. So, which is about the practical tools we can use, and again, as
Mm,
leaders, again, I talked about a lot about this coherence. Your beliefs broadcast a frequency that others sync to. Okay, and but how can we make that better? So let's talk about some practical tools. I'll talk about it from a tool actually or an exercise that's coming from my upcoming book, and then
okay.
maybe you can share something about the story growth method and as a rewiring tool. But again, I don't want to just share with our audience all the time, and my goal is to help people move on their journey here and to live the greatest life, to unlock that life that's possible for them, that they have certainly the ability to step into and do. So I have an exercise called the belief frequency exercise. Okay, and I'll just walk through real quick stepwise, and you can follow along with here. But again, beliefs are they're not just thoughts we hold in our minds, right? They create emotional states. They send biological signals, energetic frequencies. Everything has an energy to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
shapes how you said this earlier, how we show up in the world. Okay, and so you can. This exercise will help you trace a belief all the way through your nervous system and consciously recalibrate it, right? So the first step is identifying the belief. Okay. So in the cognitive exercise, it's like, okay, so think of a belief you hold right now about yourself, about leadership, about parenting or success or relationships. So for some examples might be, I'm not ready yet. If I let go of control, things will fall apart, or I have to work harder to be worthy. All these are types of, and what we're talking about are limiting beliefs that we may have for ourselves. And so then ask yourself, is that belief inherited? Did I learn this or did I choose this? And because we're programmed through our lives with limiting beliefs, and everybody starts that way. I'm sorry, but we all have that. And a lot of it is not, doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that uh, we have the ability to change those beliefs. And we're amazing. Bodies are amazing and how we can do these sorts of things. So most beliefs are absorbed, right? Okay, so they're not consciously selected. The second step is to locate that frequency, right? And this is the emotional piece of this, right? So now analyze that belief and feel it, right? And then listen to your body. It's like, where does that show up in your body? Or, like if you have a fear of speaking, a lot of people have fear of speaking, let's say, in front of people. Well, then they start to choke up and their voice gets all crackly and whatever, and they have a difficulty doing that. So every belief has a frequency, and the body usually tells us where it shows up in the body, right? So tie that emotionally to that, feel it, okay? And go from there. And then the third step is observe the signal you're broadcasting. So ask yourself, when I'm operating from this belief, how do I show up? Right? How do you show up in the world? How do you speak? Right? How do I listen? How do I lead? How do I parent? How are you showing up in the world with that belief? And again, people don't respond to our intentions, they respond to our frequency. So this connects us directly to our leadership energy, our parenting presence, for in your case, where you work with parents. Yeah, and so on. Step four. So choose a coherent replacement belief. Okay, now this is where we want to shift it. This is the neuroplasticity. This is where we want to reprogram ourselves. And again, this is not positive thinking, it's coherent selection, right? So choose a belief that feels both true and regulating to you. Okay. So instead of saying, I must control everything, let go of that and say, I can trust my ability to respond, or I move with the flow of things. And I've had to do many of these things myself to reprogram, right? Um, and then, or I'm not enough, and then to shift that to I am learning and becoming. These are just examples. So they're, what I would recommend is for people to go back and, as they said, through this exercise, and focus on one that probably will come right to the surface that you have that you want to change. It doesn't resonate with you anymore. So the replacement belief has to be embodied. You have to feel it, right? It's not aspirational, like I was saying. And then now we want to encode the new frequency here, right? We went from this belief limiting to a new belief frequency. So we want to encode that. And so it becomes biologically real for us, right? So in doing that, we put our hands on our heart, we slow our breath, we can breathe into this. We bring the new belief to mind. We feel the emotional tone of it creates, and we want to sit with that. And this is what I talk about the spiritual practice and sitting with these things, because this is it's a practice, which means you do it on a regular basis, right? It's just not one off here. And if you really want to change your programming and things beliefs that you have that don't serve you anymore, this is how you do that. This is a practical tool to do that. So that our beliefs become biology through repetition, regulation, and presence, right? So this is how it ties into that and recodes that. And then finally, observe the shift, right? See what happens. You will be amazed because now you'll notice what changed. People around you will notice that change in you. And then when you're in that belief and you're in that frequency and feel it, now how does your body feel? It feels good when you're sitting in something that resonates more with you, right? You'll know that. You'll be able to breathe without uh, stress or whatever because you've moved into that. So it only takes a small shift in our belief to create this measurable shift in frequency, right? And that's where transformation begins, right, Marcus? And that's how we do it. So I'll just close with this saying, this exercise, belief shapes emotion, emotion shapes biology, biology shapes behavior, and behavior shapes destiny.
All right. All the way connected.
So, if you, I don't know if it's a story growth method or whatever, but it's a similar thing for you. What is it that resonates?
Yeah.
What what
It
tools do
all,
you? Yeah.
yeah. Well, I use the first tool that every human has. So I look at human development, and that is stories, right? And while beliefs are very important, there are three steps to it. In order to get somebody to look at a belief, you have to get their attention. So it's getting their attention, and then you focus on the belief, and then you focus on the creation, if you will, or the doing.
Right.
It's ABC,
Hmm.
right? We work with kids in their formative years when their attention is still fresh. It's interesting. When you look in the Bible, two of the biggest words are behold or beware.
Hmm.
That happens at points of tension. You think, oh, there's something awesome, or I'm at threat. It's behold or beware. Change is happening, and then you give it meaning. Oftentimes, when kids are going through their first identity breaking, second identity, first identity breaking is when you come out the womb. Right?
Yeah.
The second
Sure.
identity, the second identity breaking is when you come into society out of your family. Your
Hmm.
parents were there; they were protecting you in the traditional sense. The different families, but
Right.
you're starting to experience other world views, aunties, uncles, coaches, parents, and whatnot, and you start to see, oh wait, my parents, what they're saying is not necessarily gospel. It's not necessarily true, but there are other ways to look at this. Unfortunately, now we have social media, which is its own other challenge. But this is where teenagers start to say, who am I? What do I believe? And there is tension there. That's why this time it's tense. And they look at their parents and they're just like, I don't know if I can fully trust you. That's why it takes a village, but then let them be secure. There's a way that you can be base camp and they come back to you. This is an ideal secure attachment.
Hmm.
Point being is, when this tension starts to happen, you can instill a story there, an empowering story. In her book, Ellen Galansky talks about we often have automatic negative thoughts. 80% oftentimes in the sentiments of when we talk about teenagers, they're just mess ups. These are
Right.
just,
Right.
if you can hold grace for a teenager to say, hey, um, I see you, I understand the awkwardness of this, and I'm here to support you. What do you need? I'm here to support you. You can set them up to say, okay, help me make this make sense. Angela Duckworth says every kid needs a psychologically wise adult in their life. Josh
Hmm.
Shipp talks about a guy named Randy. You need that adult in your life who says, I see you, and like, what do you need? It's okay.
Hmm.
And what you're doing really is you're instilling a story. Change is happening, and you're saying, people like us do things like this. That's collective identity. That is showing them how they can come through it, and you're giving them an empowering story when it matters most. It'll save maybe on therapy later on. Not to say that we don't need therapy, but we need other people. We need relationships, and you're giving them a
Sure.
relationship right when they need it. So while my approach is, I don't want to say preventative, it is fortifying them. Or it's in a verse: train up a child in the way they shall go, and when they are old, they will not depart from. It's just, I know I can fall back on this.
Yeah.
To make it very personal, Dr. Bill, and I'll end with this. I
Sure.
fall on my training because it was there before I needed it. And that when
Hmm.
everything is taken away from you, I know who I am. I know my identity. I know who I am. And that's why I push forward.
Hmm. That's great, man. I love. I would say it's proactive. Actually, I would call it that.
Thank you.
And I
Yeah,
think
you're right. That's right.
and that's for me. That's what I talk about all the time. This is just my nature of how I operate in my business, and everything is really from a proactive state to embrace. And for sure, this is why over the years, friends and family for years would just call me Renaissance Man. They say, "Yeah, hey Bill, is there anything you don't do?" You know, it's like, because I was never afraid to embrace that and step into it, whatever it was, the new experience. And even if, and many times, every time there's a first time, any new experience, there's a first time for you doing it, right?
Mhm.
So, but I always thought, well, doesn't everybody do this to myself? But no, that's not true. Actually, it's human nature to stop short of that and not step into that. Oh my gosh, don't limit yourself. Go with the flow. If you feel compelled to do something or pulled or drawn to it and do it, go do it.
Hey,
Yeah.
and Dr. Bill, it's worth adding. There are spaces where we're strong and spaces where we are weak, which is why we need
Sure.
relationships. So
Sure.
let's say maybe physical, like knowing how to eat dietarily, or attention, or maybe finances. Maybe you're strong in one of these but weak in another. But that's why you
Hmm.
find collaborators to actually learn you don't know what you don't know. So don't feel shameful if you're lacking in one area. Rather look for people who, like, you can get better in that, and you can find coaches and guides, and you know so that's why we need relationships. I just wanted to add that, like, don't
Hmm.
shame yourself for being at lack in one area.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've read Brene Brown did a lot of work with that
Mm-hmm.
as
Yeah.
well in terms of that shame
Vulnerability.
and people
Mm-hmm.
shaming. Yeah, exactly. And about daring greatly, her
Daring
book,
greatly.
a great book. And she talks a lot about those case studies or whatever. So again, it's really embracing that. And so let's uh, let's let's round this out with kind of the takeaway we want for everybody today, and then we'll move into our closing. But what is if belief is biology? Okay, what is one belief we want our listeners to embody today?
For me, it's growth is possible. In my story growth method, there are 6 principles of a growth mindset. Look, the stories change, but the principles stay the same. But the one
Right.
unifying principle at the top of all of that is growth is possible. Marcus Aurelius, who I was named after, said, as long as there is life, a good life is possible. Like, for me, that is hope. When I see myself in that situation, when I
Sure.
see others in that situation, it is, hey, what do you want your creator? How can I support you as a fellow creator? And it's possible to grow from here. Growth is possible.
exactly. And it's this time for me. It's really the persona of who I am as a brand and all of that. And it's on my website. Unlock a life that seems impossible to others. You have the potential to do that. And I even have a quote that says, I can never remember my own quotes even sometimes.
That's all right.
That's the take home. You have the ability to unlock a life that seems impossible to others. And the most important aspect of that, and we talk about the neuroscience of faith, and that is having faith, because faith is an unknown. You're stepping into something that you are being drawn to or pulled to or whatever. But uh, most people, I'd say, stop short and don't take that step. It's kind of like I remember the movie uh, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, or
Hmm.
that one where they were where they're where he gets through all of these trials. So it's a metaphor for life, right?
And then
And
the
then
bridge, the invisible bridge.
the invisible bridge that is actually there, because in the book and the writings, that's where he stops short. That's where everybody stops, right? It's a total metaphor for life and the journey. And he's like, it's a leap of faith. He realizes, oh, he's like, oh no, there's nothing there. It's a chasm. I'm going to fall and die, right? Because
Yeah,
we have this fear of dying. So, but he has this brilliant idea to. He realizes that there's something there. It's more than that. And then he throws the sand out there, right? And then he can see there's actually a bridge that was invisible, looked invisible anyway. And
yeah,
that's the thing is, you are held up when you step into that. And there's been lots of phrases of prayers and things like that around that concept. You are held, and trust in the process, move into the flow of that, and don't be afraid to step into that, because what waits for you on the other side is something pretty miraculous. So that's my takeaway for today, and just my life and journey, and so many stories you can read about in the book that are coming. But anyway, that's for me. That's that. Um, what last
it,
anything you want to close up with here? And I have a story to share on a Christmas story actually, which is timely. So, but
I
yeah,
I'll share this right on the back end just because it came to mind. I was teaching
yeah,
The Alchemist, and there's a moment when the protagonist
yeah,
Santiago
yeah,
is he was set up with an impossible task of getting from one end of the wadi to the next end of the wadi. It's like crossing over this chasm,
yeah,
and he didn't know how to do it. And beyond, he was set up, and if he didn't do it, his life was going to be taken. And I'll let you read the book. It's an awesome book. I've read it several times. But
yeah. Me too.
the long and short of it is that there was nature, and he was caught up in the wind with the sun and whatnot, and he landed on the other side. And I had to explain this to some 12th graders. And for me at the moment, it was it's a metaphysical book, but then it was just like it didn't resonate for me. It was just like, dude, what is I didn't say what is this woo woo, but I just felt like I can't explain this to you guys. Like it is part of the book, like the whole journey thing. Like I was just like I was on it, and then when this moment happened, I was just like, I really don't know, guys. There was a moment in my experience now over the past 3 years. I was just like, I get it,
Sure.
I understand it. No, I
Yeah,
understand it. When
yeah.
there's nothing you can do, and something higher than you, greater than you, puts you in a position of just like, I, I get it, I
You
understand it.
you're gonna come up to those points many times on your journey, because uh, change is inevitable. Suffering is optional, guys.
Yeah,
Suffering is
yeah,
optional. So, embrace the journey and step into it. And oh my gosh, I've done that more times than I can count. And my life is like all over, to the point where really my brothers, some people in my family think I'm crazy, right? It's like, yeah, why are you doing that? I'm on the traditional path. I never have been since the time I was a boy. So.
yeah.
But I wanted to share an example, which kind of ties into everything we've been talking about today. And of course, there's no coincidences. I was looking for, I don't know why, I was thinking about my grandfather, because today's the 14th, and actually it was 4 days ago was the anniversary of his birthday. He would have been 116 years old today, on the 10th. And so I was thinking about that, and I said, "Oh yeah," and I went back. Oh, I want to share something from my grandfather. This is kind of what led me to it. And then I went back and I said, "Oh yeah, I wrote about this. I had a Christmas story about this." So actually, 7 years ago, on December 10th, um, my mother and I live in Clearwater, Florida, Tampa, Florida. When that's my home base for the U.S. I'm in Mexico now, but I lived there for a number of years, and my grandfather was born in 1909, so he was born in St. Louis, but actually grew up in West Palm Beach, not far from you, Marcus.
Yeah.
And then he went to high school there and everything. In 1929, he graduated from high school and went in the Navy, and then into seminary school. But a little stint at the University of South Florida, or University of Florida in Gainesville. But other than that, families from Florida, really. Um, and so, long story short, he became an Episcopal minister, and he had 7 different churches all over the state of Florida that he was minister for. And so, I don't remember what prompted the idea was, but my mom and I were sitting there that a few days before that, thinking, we should go visit Granddaddy's churches. And by the way, that's one of my other books that's coming up, Spiritual Inheritance, and where I inherited my grandfather's sermons, and I'm compiling that book as we speak. But something I've been sitting with for a long time, and it wasn't in the time frame that I scanned all these because that took me a long time. But it was I don't really remember what inspired it, and I thought, we should. I wanted to go visit all the churches
Mm.
now. Right now, only five of the seven are still there today, because one was in Key West a long time ago that was lost in a hurricane, and the other one was in Jacksonville that was like a satellite church that just disappeared. It wasn't really a formal bricks and mortar place. But the other five were able to go see, and they were in Ocala, Fort Meade, Wauchula, Avon Park, and um, gosh, what was the other one?
I don't know.
uh, and all not too far from each other. Arcadia, that's it. And so they're all within driving distance in Central Florida.
Hmm.
And if you look at it, Central Florida, then the Key West is pretty far south, and then Jacksonville. We were even going to plan to go for a weekend trip that weekend if there were, but the Jacksonville one we couldn't find; it didn't exist anymore. So we decided to go see the five churches, and actually, a couple of them are historic landmarks. They were Gothic carpenter style churches, and
Hmm.
very cool. So we decided to go do that, and then um, and on that trip, we started early in the morning, and we did a road trip. I mapped it out in a circuit, and we didn't get home till later that night. So it was an 18-hour day or so, something like that. But we went and visited all the churches and took pictures, took video. I did all that. And of course, the last one he was minister for was in Fort Meade. That's a historical landmark. It still has an active congregation, but we went there, and the family who manages the property now was there to greet us, actually, which was really cool. And I remember going there when I was a kid
Hmm.
and thinking the church was huge. It was just this little tiny
A
church
box.
inside.
Yeah.
It's like a
A wooden
box. It was
box.
like, and it, I swear, I remember listening to my grandfather's sermons when I was a boy, like 10 years old, 11 years old, something like that. It's like, this is not what I remember. It must have been another place when I went in there. It's like, I don't remember this, but it was
Yeah.
really huge.
Yeah.
And actually, maybe it was one of the other churches he was ministering at, and that I went to. I don't know. It was so long ago. But anyway, long story short, we did all that. We got back from the trip, and
Hmm.
just before Christmas of that year, I was sitting outside meditating, and I was thinking about my grandfather because that was fresh in my mind. And so again, I was meditating with him, and I
Hmm.
was looking up the sky. It was a very strong breeze out of the west, and the clouds were moving. It was sunshine, little wispy clouds and stuff, and I was just so beautiful. And I said, "Oh, I want to capture this video." And so I did. I captured the video of this moving as meditating. You could hear the wind chimes blowing, and it was just I said, I thought, well, I'll use this in post production for the video I was going to put together for the family and stuff. Um, but then a few days later, when I was doing the post production and I was inputting the video, then I didn't see it when I was meditating because I was filming it probably. But in that, as the clouds moved, they formed the profile of my grandfather's face. It just like jumped out of me when I was watching. Oh my God, that's my grandfather. I can see his silhouette of his profile of his face.
Like the Lion
Yeah.
King. If you know that part
Yeah,
where he looks up.
yeah. And I have to share the picture. So let me share my screen and show that because this is really powerful. Because again, I believed I was sitting there with my grandfather. And whether I mean I can't make this up, right? What are the odds that the clouds would form in that way, right? And so let's see if I could figure out. And
There you go.
can you see that?
And it's looking up at the text. Ralph Wander
Yeah,
Anderson. What is the time?
yeah. And and then his quote came to mind as I saw that. I pulled the picture from the video, right? And and then I said, "Oops, actually, no. Did I lose the picture? Yeah, I did. Sorry. I'm sorry. Do you see the picture?
Yeah, I see the picture. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like a face
Okay.
looking up at the text.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And that
Hmm.
was towards the end of that video. The clouds moved from the right side to the left, from the west to the east, and then formed that. And then didn't see that until I was in post-production with that, right? And so, so for me, that was blew me away. That was happening, and I said, "Oh wow," you know. And I love that quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, well, "I already closed it, sorry," but yeah, it's a great quote,
Suffering in a
and
moment.
yeah, and but the infinite sits smiling in repose. So, you know, and we are infinite. We are this presence of that. And so, so for me, that's kind of and I wrote the story about this on December 24th, Christmas Eve on 2018, about this whole experience, right? And so for me, um, you know, that's a you know, we talk about miracles and all that, but again, miracles occur in our life all the time, and it is about this neuroscience of faith. It's stepping into it. It's believing that. It's releasing limiting beliefs that are holding us back energetically, and stepping into that, and really embracing that journey. And don't be afraid to. I think the number one take home I have to tell people is, don't be afraid to embrace the journey. Just do it.
Mm.
You know, Nike,
Mm-hmm,
just do
mm-hmm.
it.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
anyway, so let's close it up. This has been a great discussion, Marcus. And so let's just do a short visualization here, I think. And so, and I have something for our audience to think about, and also you. Is like, what belief are you ready to stop broadcasting, and what frequency are you ready to embody instead? This is your takeaway today, right? So as you're thinking about that, I'll read that again. I want you to breathe into that, your heart coherence, bring in your awareness to the belief, that chosen belief that you wish to change into, and feeling that that exercise we talked about, feeling that emotionally within your body, and then sending that frequency to your biologically to your nervous system and that new energy footprint. So, what belief are you ready to stop broadcasting, and what frequency are you ready to embody instead? Um, any closing remarks from you, Marcus?
Um, yeah, stories. Your identity is a story you tell yourself about yourself when you're by yourself, and surround yourself with people who tell you an empowering story of yourself. That's not to say that
Excellent.
you're without dragons. That's not to say you're not without antagonists. It just means you can come through it. And yeah,
Exactly.
write a beautiful story.
Cool. Yeah. Write the story of your life. You can do that.
Hey,
Yeah. It's been awesome having you today, Marcus. Thanks for joining. And by the way, folks, go visit Marcus's website. Do you want to tell people your website for them? They
sure.
can find you.
Yeah, I work with parents of early adolescent or early teens, 11 to 14. It's marcushiggs.com, my name. You'll see the offer that I have there. I have an app coming out next year that I'm working on to
Which is really cool, by the way, guys. I've seen that preview.
yeah. It's oh man, I'm so excited for the year for what we're living in now. This we're
Yeah,
back in a creator
yeah,
space and
sure.
oh man, yeah. So I'm excited about that. But connect with me either, yeah, at my website or on LinkedIn.com.
Yeah, cool. And same for me, guys. You can follow me on social media. Go to my website, drbillclark.life, and go to Amazon. You can get my first book,
Good
Divine
poetry.
Whispers, book of poetry, books of love, poems of love and spirit. So go check that out. It's available. And again, the second book, I'm taking off, Marcus, a few more days here, and I'm off through the end of the year. And it's working 100% on the book because I just want to get it finished.
Hmm.
It's coming. It's such a cool book. I so can't wait to get this published. So early Q1, I hope to have that published. We'll at least have the first draft done by the end of the year, or very close to that, and then refining that. Well, maybe publication in January or something. Possibly, it looks good. But anyway, so there won't be any more podcast episodes for the rest of this year. Everybody should enjoy their holidays with loved ones, and stay tuned. Our next episode coming is on this journey, this arc that we're taking on the physics of presence is about the thermodynamics of transformation. So it's a good lead in to what happens when you reprogram those beliefs and how you transform everything. So we're going to explore how entropy and surrender, which what we're talking about is surrendering when you step into it and have the faith, and flow, and how it shapes every transformation you experience in both leadership and in life. So stay tuned for that, folks. And again, Marcus, thank you for joining today. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you for having me as
Good
a,
to
as a
have.
guest, Dr. Bill. Yeah, it was wonderful to be here.
Yeah, yeah. So with love and gratitude, folks, have a happy holidays from Dr. Bill, and we'll see you when we see you on the next one here. Okay.